What is to follow is a fantastic treat, and I can't wait for you to hear it, whoever you are.
Yes. It was so good. And we talked about so many things.
Absolutely. What is coming up is a fantastic conversation with a fantastic man, fantastic director, fantastic actor, fantastic producer, and just a fantastic guy.
Yeah.
And a geek. Let's put that out there.
Oh man. I love our geek friends.
Yeah. We've been looking forward to, we look forward to all of our interviews, but we're looking forward to this one because it was kind of short notice and we popped it together. And it's wonderful. And you have a lot of stuff going to be thrown at you. Soak it in.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So should we just jump into it?
Yeah, I mean, it's like a webinar almost.
It really is.
It's so good.
Yes.
All right, let's do it.
All right, we're off. Hey, B-Siders. Welcome to another episode of Bravo for the B-Side. This is Jim.
This is Danny. And
we are here today with a wonderful actor and producer and director and a lot of things. We have Mr. Eric Schumacher here. We talked about him recently as portraying Doc Holliday in Tombstone Rashomon, Alex Cox film. And we are going to just talk about all kinds of fun stuff.
Yeah, I'm really excited.
Hello, Eric.
Hello, and thank you for having me. Great to be here, guys.
No problem. Thanks for being here. Let's just jump right into it.
Yeah.
The portrayal of Doc Holliday was absolutely just fantastic.
Thank you.
And I know in our conversations you talked about mental. Oh my God. Mental and physical preparation for the role. And I want to get into that because the one thing that we noticed was in all of the Tombstone movies, back from Henry Fonda and before and after, Doc Holliday had his walking stick, but it was more of an affectation of the character. Mm-hmm. They didn't play it as, he absolutely needed that to get around, especially later on. And your physical representation of that was fantastic because
thank you.
It looked painful. Watching the character, we got an absolute sense of what this man lived with day to day. And we were just talking about how that probably helped his legend because in Hollywood, no one wants to see somebody gambling around with a crutch when they're supposed to be this big presence. But in real life, people who see him or saw him, and especially for the first time, didn't understand that his infirmity in no way inhibited his gunplay. And probably made some deadly misjudgments based on that.
Well, I have a theory about that also. I think that Doc was in a lot of pain and was struggling in a lot of ways physically and of course famously drank a lot and used a lot of drugs. He was trying to self-medicate the pain and the other symptoms, and but I think that I suspect that he had almost a death wish in a way. He was absolutely fearless gun and knife fights, and I don't think he would allow himself to intentionally lose, but I think he also was incredibly bold and took risks that maybe others would hesitate. And as a result, he was actually a very successful gunfighter. He also happened to be very good at it. I mean, he was an excellent shot and extraordinarily fast. That was one of the main things Wyatt said about him, was how fast he was with a 6-shooter, and really good with a knife. I mean, he was an expert with a knife. But on top of that, when there's actual violence about to happen, there's a certain amount of fear of loss of life, and that can still movements or make people extra cautious. And I think he just once it was time to throw down, he was just, well, whatever happens,
Well, I know that his whole life as a young man, and especially through his teens, he had that you can't do this. You can't. Mm-hmm. Anytime something came up, because back in those days, if you weren't in like perfect health or of perfect disposition, everybody kind of rode you hard, man or woman. And I always felt that a lot of his boldness in these challenges, in these fights, were stemming from some source of, you're not going to tell me I can't do this, and I'm not going to not participate in this or let this pass just because I have a limp, or just because I, washed out of the world of expectations kind of thing.
Well, I think it's also important to note that there's controversy as to whether or not he actually had a cane or actually walked with one. So I don't think that he was, that he was notably infirm. I think he was hiding a lot of the weakness and pain that he was in, because he was, people. When you were a famous gunfighter, there was always somebody looking for your weakness and looking for the best time to try to take you on. I was given a cane as a prop, and I think it's probably about a 50-50 argument in the historical world as to whether or not he actually used or had one. But since I was given one, it occurred to me that a lot of Doc's world would have been, especially as an adult, would have been playing at strength. Looking strong, or even looking and emotionally erratic at points, so that people wouldn't challenge him. You couldn't look weak, but but on the other hand, it's also I'm trying to remember historically who it was who said that in some of my research that he had a bit of a slouch, and as I was researching Doc, I got on the phone with a doctor from London who specializes in tuberculosis, and unfortunately his name is escaping me at the moment, who spent an hour with me, and he confirmed that a lot of tuberculosis patients, because they're just so damn weak, especially at the later stages, would tend to slouch a bit. And so I kind of built a lot of Doc's persona on, here's a guy who is actually tough as nails. I mean, he was a tough guy, and also has an incredibly strong constitution. Somebody who just an iron will, and highly educated, had a better idea of what was going on with him than most would at the time, but also was just really tired, because this lung disease was eating him up inside, and he couldn't look tired, he couldn't look unaware, he couldn't look weak a lot of the time, because that would be the time that somebody would want to challenge him. So the cane both would then be used both ways. When he was feeling stronger, it might be used just as an affectation, and when he was feeling weaker, it would be something he would actually lean on, but somehow he had to make even that look somewhat intentional, rather than something that was just holding him upright, even when it was sometimes.
Right. Well, and
so I imagine him like sitting against a wall playing faro or poker, and having, and feeling really weak, and just leaning against the wall and trying to make it look casual, when really what was happening was he was trying to hold himself upright.
And in those days, to reach that level of notoriety, you have to become a showman. I mean, Wyatt Earp has always been depicted as a man of few words. Just got to the point, wasn't one for idle chit chat. He's been depicted as curt and, just really abrupt. And who knows absolutely for sure on his day to day. But I think, once that kind of gets around, I always wondered, did any of these, and not just the Tombstone folks, any of the Old West legends, like Billy the Kid, Jesse James, all these people who get elevated in the public eye, I always wondered, did they start to pursue the career of an actor, to portray and uphold and embolden all of these things that have been said about them and how they've been made out to be, because there's nothing worse than disappointment in the public eye.
That's interesting. Well, also to some degree, this was a matter of life and death. This is a time when there were people who wanted to make a name for themselves. Although I think that also Doc also had a temper, and especially famously when he got drunk, and so there may have been times where he got into a gunfight for very different reasons. But yeah, when you were a Western legend, there's a certain degree of having to put on a bit of a face for others, not just I don't know that Doc really. I think he was aware that he'd become famous, and I suspect that he had a bit of an ego about him, being an incredibly intelligent guy, basically living in a cow town, where very few people had much of an education, and he had a doctorate. But I'm not sure whether he was. I think that may have just simply been his basic personality, a tendency to be a storyteller and a showman anyway. But he was playing multiple roles at the same time. He was playing somebody who was stronger than he was. He was playing somebody who was, maybe even more confident than he was. And I suppose he was probably aware of the celebrity factor as well, and that may have played into it. But it is just a very different thing when that person who's looking at you admiringly may also be looking for your weakness.
Yes. I think one of our favorite literary portrayals of him is in a book called Doc by
Mary Doria Russell.
Thank you. Because interestingly enough, a lot of that book dealt with him in his practice.
Yeah.
And that was kind of one of the first, on the page introductions of, he was all this other stuff, but he was, a dentist, hence the name Doc, and he was good at it. And he made such an earnest effort to make it work, but he unfortunately picked the worst economic settings to try and, pump up a practice, because of the draw of what was going on, as we get west of the Mississippi, life's adventures just kind of beckons to almost every human being at that time.
Well, yeah, and I think part of him going out that way, obviously was because of the tuberculosis.
Right.
But so I'm curious, because you mentioned talking to a doctor who specializes in tuberculosis. How much research did you dive into for this role?
Quite a lot. And it actually started before I was cast. I was asked to audition, and about a year before, I had played Wyatt Earp in a television show for Fox called Legends and Lies: The Real West, and so I was asked to audition, and I said, I'd really like to audition for Wyatt, because I really didn't feel like it was done with that character. And they said, no, we want you to audition for Doc. I was like, for what? But, huh? Are you sure? I mean, yeah, we really want you to audition for Doc. And I didn't understand why. But I knew that I had about 2 weeks from that time to find Doc Holliday, because I was going to walk into a room in front of Alex Cox and audition. And it was a competitive audition. There were a lot of other people auditioning as well. And so I started just digging into who he was, and it was kind of, like most of the characters that I play, I tend to specialize in heavy character roles and things that are very different from me. The highest compliment anyone can pay me is if they see me on screen and they didn't know if I was in the movie. And that's the highest, and I've been blessed to hear that a few times. It means I've done my job right. Doesn't help my fame as much, but so I just went into this internal struggle to try to find this guy and then become him as much as possible so that I could convince Alex that I could be Doc Holliday. And so that meant in that phase just reading a lot about Doc and trying to find the center of the character, who I thought he was and what his main motivators, his main persona was based on. And when I found that center, everything else started to come together. So I did the audition, and I have to admit, normally when I do an audition, I try to just let it go after the audition and just, okay, I'm not going to think about it anymore. But my wife will tell anyone that I checked my phone literally every 15 minutes for a week to see if I got in this role. And so I actually have to, as an aside, I have to throw some props out. I was waffling as to whether to audition in the first place, much as it was fascinating to be considered for a role with Alex Cox, because I'm doing a lot of producing stuff and have been for a while. So I'm, my time is really at a premium. And I just didn't know if I had time, was what I was telling myself. Maybe it was just my own, trepidation about what a thing this would be to take this on. And I was driving to a location scout with my friend Jeff Notkin, who's a pretty well-known television host and producer, and also the president of the National Space Society. And I told him that I was thinking about auditioning for this film, and I wasn't sure if I should do it. And he said, "Are you out of your damn mind? This is Alex Cox." And so he almost ran me off the road. So I said, "Okay, yeah, you're right. Okay, I'm stupid. I should do this. I mean, it's Alex Cox, for crying out loud. We both love his work." So anyway, I went in for the audition, and after I was got the phone call and was cast, I then realized, oh wow, I have 30 days, and I have to be Doc Holliday. It's not enough for me to just play Doc Holliday. People need to see Doc Holliday on the screen. That's how I work. I don't want you to see me. So, and he's so different than me. So I started by, I read a ton of stuff. I spoke with Alex a bit. He gave me a lot of great insights. He did ask me to, this is a historical character. A lot of people have played him. I don't like reviewing other actors' work when I'm going to play someone who has been played by others, unless I need to match something, unless I need to, unless for some reason I really do need to match another person's performance, which is difficult. But Alex asked me in particular to watch one performance, which was Victor Mature's Doc Holliday. And I didn't understand why. Victor Mature, for anyone who's familiar with his work, was a bodybuilder. The man was huge. Wonderful actor. I've always loved his work. He's most famous for Samson and Delilah. He was Samson, in case anyone was getting it. But that'll give you an idea of the sheer size of the man. And I was watching that film, and I still couldn't quite figure out why Alex wanted me to watch that one in particular. And there's a scene where he's talking with Wyatt Earp, and he comes across as powerful, and he comes across as charismatic, and then quite suddenly out of nowhere he starts coughing, and he looks like a weak, frail child. Just he goes from Schwarzenegger-esque here to just suddenly managed to look really weak, and then I went, I understand something. So then I started researching tuberculosis really hard. Now, in the meantime, I also had to change my body. I'm not normally as thin as you would see me on screen. And I also knew that I was going to have scenes with Christine Deutsch, who played Big Nose Kate Haroni, quite wonderfully, I might add. She was wonderful to work with. And she's very thin. She's actress, Hollywood actress standard size, which is turn left and turn sideways and they disappear.
Right.
They have to be, in order to look like you're very like you're what the Western world would consider to be, quotes, fit on screen. you have to be quite thin because of the way that camera lenses, make you look a little larger.
Right.
That whole "it adds 10 pounds" thing is really true. So I had to try to look thinner than her because Doc was, in advanced tuberculosis at the time. So I also basically starved myself half to death and worked out like a demon. You could find me at the gym at 2:00 in the morning, running on a treadmill, just a little longer, every day. And then I just read everything I could get my hands on until I could, start putting the pieces together of his physicality, of where his thoughts came from. Basically, what I try to do when I play a character is try to build them from the ground up as a complete person as much as I'm able to. And I had 30 days, so I was in a bit of a panic mode. And it was funny when I walked onto set. My good friend Rogelio Camarillo, who played Billy Claiborne and has worked with me on a number of other projects, hadn't seen me for that 30 days. And I walked onto the set and he said, "Oh my God, are you okay? Are you okay? You look horrible. What happened to you?" And I said, "I'm playing Doc Holliday." And he said, "Oh, wow, good job." So, but people would famously, well, not famously yet, maybe someday, but I remember, I would be kind of chuckled at because they served these wonderful lunches and meals for the cast and crew that old Tucson Studios put together for everyone where we were shooting, and just steak and vegetables and desserts and all this incredible food, and I would have a small piece of broccoli.
And that was the splurge.
It was, and mind you, to my fellow actors out there, don't be me. That was stupid. I was lightheaded all the time. I was dizzy. I was, I used it for the role, and it helped me, to remind myself that Doc was in pain, and that this tuberculosis ain't no fun. But all of these things were part of the process of understanding what I was reading about Doc and how that tied into how he would react to everything around him, because it was all taken through this filter of what was important to him in his life, what he still was trying to do, and the constant reminder that he wasn't well.
Right. I just want to step back a little bit. I love the fact that Alex had you watch Victor Mature's performance.
Mm-hmm.
Because
My Darling Clementine was the name of the film.
And I would like to think I would have come up with that, because I know that performance, and when we watch other Tombstone films, I kind of compare to what Hollywood does now. And this kind of touches on just the last few things that you said. Back then, it wasn't a big thing for actors to go under this metamorphosis of physical change for their parts. And I thought it was the most visual representation of how big Doc Hollywood was. Oh my God. Doc
Are you
Holliday.
all right?
There's too much going through my head right now. How Doc Holliday was this larger than life person. And you can, physically you can represent that, but then to the dichotomy of his existence was he was this big, strong-willed individual, but then, he was as, weak as a sick rabbit when those coughs and stuff, because it takes everything out of a person when they have those fits.
Yeah.
And especially as it progresses, and to go from someone you don't want to look in the eye, someone you're nervous about sitting at the table because he's had a few drinks and you've heard, anything can set him off. And then all of a sudden you look and you're like, I could go over and flick him in the forehead and he'd be done for, after he has a bout. Because I think of, the most recent big films, Dennis Quaid, his Doc Holliday was almost as if he just couldn't be bothered to be present. He was a short-tempered, agitated, not really want to be involved with anything display, as compared to
You're pointing at me, but I don't know what you
the names are flying out of my head.
Val Kilmer, perhaps?
Val Kilmer, thank you. Val Kilmer's performance was more of a soft-spoken, whimsical. He's just drinking up every moment, around himself, especially at the table. And I loved the bit where he did the fancy gun work with the cup, split on his fingers. I thought that was an excellent representation of the whimsical side of him. And yours, like I said, it was different because of the format of the film.
Right.
What we had of you and your portrayal was the interview bit, which is kind of, when done correctly, and it was, we don't see Doc in his element. We just hear him recounting a tale. And then through the bits of flashbacks, we see all of these performances that you're able to give us, the character and the situation. Now, going back to what you said about don't starve yourself, I know that that's becoming increasingly a thing amongst actors of all levels. We hear a lot about how, people starving themselves for a role because at that point in this character's life, especially if it's a biopic type of thing, where they'll get to where their ribs are showing and, physical, Robert De Niro putting weight on all those years ago for Raging Bull, all these things. I don't know. I've always watched things like that happen, and I've wondered, would it have mattered if Robert De Niro wore a fat suit? For me as the viewer. And I've always wondered how far in the actor's process people are willing to go to achieve that performance. And I guess I would ask you, did it help you doing that, identify with the character to present him to the camera?
It did. It did in a lot of ways. And, it also presented some challenges because, as I said, I didn't do it in a very smart way. There's smart ways to do this. Right. I felt in a rush. I made some choices that I'm not sure I would have done again. And I've actually had to lose weight for other roles since, and I've done it in a much smarter way. So in a way it did help because, I was also, the process of losing weight quickly is not a comfortable process. It's not a lot of fun, and it is painful, and it is, and the lightheadedness and all that other stuff that accompanied all that did make it a little bit hard to think on occasion. So again, I wouldn't necessarily recommend. I would definitely not recommend following that pathway. I would do it in a healthier, safer way. But that was what I did. And so on the one hand, while there were moments where I'd be on set and the world was swimming, I was like, oh, pretty colors, so one of the things also that I should add is that if you met me during production when I was on set, you didn't meet me, you met Doc. I was in the role from a little bit before I walked onto the set until maybe about 30 minutes after every day. And so that was the other thing that helped here, was that even when I was a little lightheaded and so on, I wasn't me exactly.
Okay.
I was me. There was me. Me was there, but I was maintaining character, and that kind of helped me if I was, because of my silliness had gotten a little off track mentally because it was a little dizzy or something, I was snapping back into Doc. And then I would acknowledge that, okay, first off, Eric, go drink some water and have something to eat now. And secondly, this is something I can use, because, when you're fighting something as serious as tuberculosis, you're going to have these kinds of moments. But if you're that guy who is out in the street at the time and everyone is looking at you and some of them are thinking, can I take him right now? You don't have time for that. So you've got to play it off.
Right.
So there were moments, where maybe that was happening and and that wasn't what you were seeing, but it may have affected that moment of my performance, which is also interesting because there was so little of Doc in this film in any context except during the interview. There were moments here and there, but I wanted every one of those moments to be real.
Right.
And because it was such a hard character to find, I really felt that I needed to stay in character as much as I could, because I didn't want to then have to do the ramp up of, okay, let's get back from Eric to Doc here,
right,
when cameras are rolling,
Well, we watch Walking Dead, and I would always like to see, post on social media and stuff, especially Norman Reedus was always posting offset pictures. Andrew Lincoln, famously in 6 out of 10 photos had been caught sitting with headphones in, listening to music that he selected to keep him in the character of Rick Grimes, in between all these things, to keep in that mood and the motivation and stuff. And I know that when Tom Hanks did Forrest Gump, his wife, Rita Wilson, said she loved that movie, not because of anything having to do with the movie, but because for the entire production, Tom Hanks was so mellow, and he's mellow, I guess, anyway. But he was so soft and gentle. So not just with Doc, but any role that you play, do character personalities carry over? I mean, and your day after day, or 3 days a week or whatever, playing this character, during that time, do you find, or has anyone found or suggested that you are emulating that person a bit?
Well, let's just say that my wife is an incredibly patient, tolerant person.
Fair enough. Well mentioned.
Who gets me? I do tend to whoever I'm. This is one of the things I love so much about the art of acting, is that I learn so much about me in the process. I find different aspects of my personality that I can connect to build a new persona, and I end up with new skill sets, with new ways of thinking, with new perspectives on the world. And so in the process of, which for me, again, is often pretty much a struggle to force myself into a new shell for a while, to just become someone else. I do find that their personality is bleeding into my whole outlook on life during that period. So I was actually kind of a blast, except when I was, except when I was having small rages, when I was playing Doc. I think my wife found me much more attractive as Doc, actually, because he was so charismatic. Other characters I played, I don't want to talk about the times I played like a serial killer, but because my attitude and mood was very different. So yes, it often bleeds over. One story I like to tell, I was in a play a number of years ago called The Last Days of Judas Iscariot, and I played Yosef Aziz El-Fayumi.
Okay.
I've mangled his name, but he's an Egyptian Coptic Christian undead attorney. And
all right.
It's a three and a half hour play. It was one of the lead roles in the play, and I was on stage for the entire 3.5 hours. And I, did another one of those becoming someone else things. And I was, my wife and I took a vacation. We went to one of my favorite places, Bisbee, Arizona, and we have friends who run a wonderful inn there called the Schoolhouse Inn, where we were staying. And I was working on Yosef, and so I would walk around supermarket and look at a bottle of ketchup and say, "This is interesting bottle, the way they designed." And my wife, grabbed my shoulder and said, "Listen, I'm not spending my entire vacation with El-Fayumi. You get an hour a day, pal." But yeah, I will actually walk around in public as that person on occasion, because I want to learn how to better interact in that persona. So yeah, it bleeds over in multiple ways, and also does color the way that I look at the world. So if I'm playing a character who's especially cynical, I will probably be especially cynical for a while. If I'm playing someone who's very angry, I'm probably going to be mad a lot, because they're birthing in me, so to speak.
I I love that. 1 hour a day. But I like what you do with that though, because and I can't speak too much of acting. My biggest acting performance was Shylock in a high school play, and the only reason well, it is, but the only reason I got it is because at the time I was living in a super Bible Belt area, and nobody wanted to touch that with a 100-foot pole. I'm like, well, I'll do it. I love this play. I love Shakespeare, and I love Shylock. Of course. But when it memorizing lines and spitting them out, waiting for your cue, the verbal trigger or the physical trigger to put out your lines, is a craft. But I think it would be interesting. I wonder how many other actors play their part on the street, because you have to. It's not scripted. It's not. You can't prep for it. If you have a conversation with someone, you have to be able to react and think, how would that character react, especially if you're doing it in a voice, intonation, and everything. I think that's brilliant.
It's so fun. Go ahead.
Well, I think I find it especially useful because, okay, you're on a set, you're playing a role, you have prescribed lines. Every so often, a director will ask you to improvise a little bit, which can be fun. But I'm, noted as someone who is extremely strict about having my lines as close to perfect as I can get them. I hate flubbing. I'm really disciplined about that. I don't want to be the one, and of course we all make mistakes. I certainly have, but I don't like being the one who ruins a shot. Now that being said, regardless of whether you're doing an improv moment or whether you're doing a scripted moment, you're still to some degree improving because you are reacting to what's happening around you. So, another actor will give you something emotionally, and if it's something different, you should be prepared, because if you really know who you are as a character, you'll respond emotionally to what they say, and it may be with the same line. But that's what makes it real in a scene, is the ability to have a real interaction with each other under prescribed settings. And so doing that a bit out in the real world helps me to emotionally react, because I'm putting myself in a circumstance where I can't anticipate what someone's going to say to me. And so I have to know why my character would respond to them the way I'm going to respond, and having to do it on the fly like that tests me and helps me to make sure that I'm completely present when I'm performing.
I think that's amazing, because as you were talking, I was thinking about my one acting thing when I was in middle school. I was Aphrodite in a play, and in the particular play that I was playing her, she was just an awful bitch. She was just terrible. But 6th grade me was having so much fun playing that character that I just kind of kept doing it. When we weren't actually rehearsing, but we're fiddling with the set and making stuff, and the teachers absolutely loved it, but all my friends were like, I can't stand you right now. I'm just not going to talk to you for a long time. But I don't think I was using it in a productive way. I think I was just having fun.
Just rolling with it.
But you were making art in a way, even if it was just for your own consumption, and so in a way you were exploring the breadth of your own persona and who you could be. So I think there's something productive in that.
I think that's true. I'm normally a very nice person, I think.
Well, you're chill and yeah, just kind of roll with stuff.
Yeah.
I countered that with my swift and sometimes totalitarianistically harsh reactions, snap judgments. I don't waste time on thought. There's the choice.
Who needs that thinking stuff anyway?
I know. Intellectualism. Waste of my time. I want to ask you, so we're talking about acting. But you're a I don't know what the term is these days, a slash occupation, something slash something,
hyphen,
something, or is it hyphenate?
Hyphenate.
Because
multi-hyphenate.
I'm always interested in how people get to fall into more than one career in this industry because we're just writers. I mean, that's the bottom line.
Mm-hmm.
And we got roped into doing so much more. And, haven't actually directed, but have, I could, like I say, I did assistant directing when we did our short. So I've learned to do visual effects, sound. I mean, we're, working on editing and this thing we're going to put together. And that's more of a, man, I really want to do this. This seems interesting. It's, Jesus Christ, I got no one else and this has got to get done.
Right. Indie filmmaking, right?
Yeah. What took you from one aspect of this to where, okay, so acting is great, but now I want to, take the burden on of every migraine headache this production could ever have.
Yeah.
And then everything in between. I mean, what was your draw and what were those moments that prompted you?
Well, ultimately, part of it's just the nature of my personality. I've always had a rather entrepreneurial nature in my personality, and I've also, I guess you could say that I have the personality type that has vision for things, and I'm very passionate about seeing them come to reality. So I, as you aptly stated, I began as an actor. My parents are both actors, and they started training me when I was 6, when we were living in LA. And I became very passionate for that. And over time, I just started started thinking, well, what would I do if I had the opportunity to make my own movie? And I was about I think around 11 or 12 years old, when I went to a Creation Con in San Francisco. That's basically it's a science fiction convention largely centered around Star Trek at the time. And although they had some Doctor Who guests, which I thought was awesome also.
Yeah.
And I heard Nichelle Nichols speak. And had the opportunity to have like 0.5 seconds to say hello to her. And Walter Koenig, I might add. And for those who don't know, Nichelle Nichols, the original Uhura on Star Trek, the original series, and Walter Koenig, of course, the original Mr. Chekhov, later Mr. Bester on Babylon 5, which he was frigging brilliant in. But anyway, Nichelle Nichols was telling a story which has become quite famous now, about how she was, I believe it was about the beginning of the 3rd season of Star Trek and final season of that first series, and she was had gotten an offer for a Broadway play. And if you've ever seen her on screen back when she was doing Star Trek, I mean, first of all, stunningly gorgeous and just statuesque. I mean, she was a dancer. She had a dancer's body, just amazing to watch, especially as a heterosexual male. But anyway, hello, yeah. Anyway, but no, very beautiful and an incredible screen presence. And she was saying that she was going to leave Star Trek because she'd gotten this offer for a Broadway show, which was really her passion. And I guess she'd announced it. And I'm going to badly paraphrase the story as I recall her telling it, but as she said, she got a phone call from Martin Luther King Jr.
Yes.
And Martin Luther King Jr. was a fan of Star Trek, and he pointed out to her that there were, using the vernacular of the time, little black girls and little black boys and little white boys and little white girls across the country and across the world who were watching the equivalent of a female black naval officer on television, and this was a big deal. And she got it, and she stayed on the show. And as I heard her talk, it occurred to me, wow, what Roddenberry did in putting the show together and making sure that in the 1960s, during the Cold War, the middle of the, a turning point in the civil rights movement, shortly after World War II, you got a Japanese guy, a Russian guy, and an African-American woman all together in positions of authority on a television show. I mean, and working together. What he did was he made a clarion call to what humanity could be. And maybe I could do that. So I started chewing on that more and more. Like, maybe I could find a way to influence how productions were made. Mind you, I'm 12, but or however old I was. But this is my mind. I've always been that type of person where I'm always, like driving for that next thing, that next way to make an impact. And then a number, I still hadn't quite figured it out. And a number of years later, I saw a film by Robert Townsend called Hollywood Shuffle.
Okay.
And Robert Townsend, for those who don't know, well, you should, because he's an absolutely brilliant filmmaker who broke a lot of ground. And one of the things he did, he was an actor and a comedian. And this was back in when he made it. I saw it afterwards, sometime afterwards, but I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, maybe somewhere in there. It might have even been more in the middle of the 80s. I can't recall, but you can look it up. You have IMDb, I'm sure. Anyway, he made this film called Hollywood Shuffle, this incredibly biting, satirical comedy about the experience of the African American in Hollywood, and it was funny as crap. Yeah, and he made this thing on his credit cards. He couldn't figure out how to raise a budget, and mind you, this was before digital. This was before, so it was the 80s. It was before digital. It was before you had DSLRs or mirrorless or any of those things. So big cameras and everything was much more expensive, and you needed a lot more people to make anything work right. And so he just ran up his credit cards to make this movie, and did it guerrilla style. He just managed to pull this thing off. And his next gig was directing Eddie Murphy's next movie. Because it was he did so well. So I was like, oh, and that's how, because I didn't have a ton of clout, I didn't have a ton of money or anything like that. So I started these little pieces inspired me. I did study filmmaking, and formally as well. And then little by little, I started to get more and more into the production side of things. I mentored under a number of people, and then eventually started producing, and that's things developed from there. And after producing things on my own dime, occasionally people hired me to direct or produce, but I still have done most of my work indie style, and eventually became a part of the small company I have now, Sealy Studios. So it really just kind of comes down to that. Both I understand I have a pretty good understanding of the business side of things, and I understand how that part functions, and it's important to me to make sure that the business side of things functions in a way that's beneficial to everyone involved, and also because I'm passionate about making art, and I'm passionate about making art that I believe in. So whether I'm hired as an actor, or whether I'm hired as a director or producer, or whether I'm spearheading and leading my own project, I'm fairly picky about what I do, and I'm pushing more and more in a direction of making projects that I'm behind from a creative standpoint, and that I think are valuable to the world in one way or another, be it just to make you laugh, or to make you think, or make you feel something, or make you ask questions, maybe make you, as my Kung Fu Grandmaster used to say, make you have wings of mind and think bigger about the way things are or could be in, the greater universe. So, so I have all these multiple passions, and depending upon the project and how it comes about, I'll, wear many hats if necessary. And yes, it's intensely stressful, as you have learned. It's really hard to make a movie, regardless of your budget size, whether it's big or small. I know from experience this is not an easy thing, and it's a lot of pressure, it's a lot of responsibility. But if you believe in what you're doing, then it basically comes down to, I don't feel like I have a choice. Exactly. In order to be the person that I need to be, I have to do the work.
I get that. I just want to jump back a little bit, because you said a lot. You made a lot of references there.
I do that. Sorry.
No, that's great.
We were fortunate enough to have Nichelle Nichols at Wizard World Comic-Con here a couple of years ago. We didn't get to see her because that was also the same weekend we had our daughter allowed her to bring a friend, so we were entertaining them, and we didn't.
2 small children.
Yeah, we didn't get to do the panels and stuff, but I did get to stand on the outside of her booth, and I and this is kind of the thing, because I just wanted to tell her, that I love everything you've done in and out of, Star Trek. And, for what you've represented all these years, thank you. And, you may never have remembered that moment. We also had a chance to get a picture with Edward James Olmos a few years before that. And I just took that opportunity to say, you are such a huge inspiration to so many. Yeah. Thank you for all that you do. And, thank you, Eric, because we like to thank people. I mean, this is no small thing.
Thanks.
Actors, directors, anyone who produces this stuff for the last 100 years has been entertaining the public in good times, bad times.
Yeah.
And when there are certain uncertainties, like you said, Gene Roddenberry, that's been my pillar argument for why Star Trek should be a national treasure.
Yeah.
Is not because I'm a sci-fi geek, but what he did, exactly what you said. He put ethnicities, he put politics all together in a single room and gave them responsibility. And and they were trusted. That's the thing. William Shatner is William Shatner. Captain Kirk is Captain Kirk. That will always be. But to take that a little bit further and say, well, he was who he was because he had these people he trusted implicitly.
Yeah.
And we also have Dr. McCoy, who was the first science fiction doctor who was portrayed as, he came from the backwoods and he's a good old country boy. They've always been so tight and rigid and, almost even tighter than Spock portrayal. That was, and we've mentioned Star Trek before, but I'll just say it again. Listeners, check out the Star Trek, the original series, because that's what began it all.
Yeah.
That's what made modern sci-fi television. We'd had movies for 30 years before that, but this was the one that kicked it off.
It was brilliant on every level. And I should also add, I've told some of the people I mentor, watch this thing also from the standpoint of how just the craft and how they made that particular series. From a cinematography standpoint, the way they lit certain characters to make them appear a certain way, the way they shot certain things, the way they did so many different things with that particular show, which had, by today's standards, very rudimentary special effects and so on. And they did it all with these ginormous cameras, and it's just incredible what they pulled off technically, and you can learn a lot as a filmmaker by watching some of these great works and learning how and why they did certain things a certain way, that may help give clues as to how you can pull certain things off, as well as the performances on that show. I mean, there's a reason these characters are so iconic.
Right.
There's a reason that they are beyond a part of pop culture, because they were such strong characters, so well portrayed by such rock solid actors.
Oh yeah. Have you read William Shatner's Star Trek Memories?
I have not yet. No, actually.
Well, I would recommend getting the audiobook because he narrates the book.
Oh, awesome.
There was a time when I was on the road a lot, and audiobooks were my best friend for those 8-hour jaunts. Because at the time, actually, I lived in Arizona. I was in Cottonwood, but I managed several states. So I was driving from, central Arizona to Northern California and Washington and, tip of Idaho and stuff. So these are these wonderful books. But his talking about the series, because he goes all the way up to his last performance on film in the franchise. And it's just so awesome. The thing I got from it was Gene Roddenberry. I mean, he lifts him up, as a creator, and he doesn't hold back on holding out on how pigheaded he could be. And I thought it was brilliant because I always thought Gene Roddenberry was a staple tale on, as a creative, hold on to what you want. I mean, the whole reason Star Trek got canceled is because they got tired of arguing with him. The networks were, the suits were really terrified of what he's going to come up with next. We have a interracial kiss on screen. That
first time on American national television.
Yeah, and several of them had strokes over that and tried everything they could to stop it, but it happened, and it was magnificent. But I always thought Gene Roddenberry's tale was that's what we kind of tell people is, we see movies and we don't like them sometimes, but that's just our opinion. Make your thing, do your thing, act your thing, create, and don't let anyone hold you back. I also wanted to quick mention Robert Townsend. We mentioned him in a past episode on Meteor Man.
Yes.
That was another credit card funded film.
Yes.
That I absolutely adored, just because of what he, in all instances, what he was able to pull off with. And it's not like he had a black card or unlimited, charge limits. He had several credit cards, and we tried to impress that upon people. There are people who've put literally everything they have and more on the line with no promise of return. And that's kind of the, we always refer it as creatives are mental defectives, because no logic-based thought would ever steer you to this kind of career. I'm gonna put myself in debt for tens of thousands of dollars for something has a 1.5% chance of giving me a return, because I don't have a studio, I don't have connections, I don't have this.
Right.
And then after a couple months, I'm going to do it again. Start another one.
It's an insane career path unless you think very different. It's one of the things that I periodically I will take some people on to directly mentor, because that's been done for me a number of times, and it's how I learned a lot of what I've learned. And one of the things that I will usually say as I begin the process is, one of the first things that I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to frighten you away from doing this. I'm going to do everything in my power to make you turn and run, as you understand what you're really getting into here. And if I'm not successful in doing that, then you might have a shot at this career.
I like that. We spoke with Lowell Dean.
I was just thinking about that. And what he said to us was, this was his advice for indie filmmakers and people who want to get into this business is, if you can stop, do.
Mm-hmm. And that was the whole, if you can put this all away, walk away from it, do it.
Yeah. That was actually very similar to one of my direct mentors, who was actually my dad's best friend, and they both went into acting with, surprisingly, was a gentleman named Paul Mantee, who was a fairly well-known actor throughout the 60s, 70s, 80s, and so on. Robinson Crusoe on Mars. If you know that film, that was him. He was a lead in that.
Okay.
And he was also a regular on Cagney and Lacey in the 80s, and done a bunch of Great Santini, done a bunch of amazing roles. Really fantastic actor. And so it was funny listening to he and my dad would argue all the time about acting process, because they had a very different approach. And Paul was very diplomatic when he tried to explain that he disagreed with my dad, but he taught me a lot about the business side of acting. And that was also, often when I speak in public, I will leave the audience with a direct quote from him, which is very similar to what you were just saying, which is basically, he said to me once, Eric, if you can possibly think of anything else you could do with your life at all that could be fulfilling, that isn't this, go do that. Please go do that, because this will take everything from you. It'll give you a lot back, but the sacrifices you'll have to make could be really a lot. Mm-hmm. So just, if there's any chance that you can find something else, turn around and walk away now. And I took that to heart, and I really did a lot of deep introspection about it, and even tried to walk away for a while, and I couldn't do it.
Well, we hope people hear these kinds of things and process it, because we don't ever want to dissuade anybody, right? You always want to encourage art, but that's the long and short of it. I mean, we simply cannot not do what we do. Yeah. We can't.
It's what you are.
Yeah, and life happens. There are times, there's spans of my life where I didn't do any of this kind of stuff just because life demanded otherwise. But that just made it more torturous.
Yeah.
Because, I'm counting the days and the minutes. How long has it been since I've been, it's been 14 months since I've been able to do any writing or this and that. And so, yeah. I just want to ask a question. Is it Mr. Santini's birthday recently? Because I recall seeing a bunch of stuff on Twitter.
Oh, you mean Paul Mentee?
Or yeah.
Oh, that's a good question. I hadn't seen anything. He passed away quite a few years ago,
right?
But I don't actually know if it was. Okay. I hadn't seen anything about him on Twitter. That's surprising that I hadn't seen anything.
I see. Well, I see random like groupings of stuff, and most of it are celebrities who have passed, but it's recognizing their birthday and their contributions and their big roles. Mm-hmm. And I don't actively participate in the whole thing. I'm mostly just trying to keep up and, like a few things to show the people kind enough to follow us that, we're not just here to ignore you. But I mean, that's a full-time job for 5 people reading social media feeds.
It is. It's very, that's an interesting it's a thing. You kind of have to, I mean, I guess you don't have to, but it's, advisable to be up on that as a performer or as an artist. It's important for your career growth, and that's a whole other set of skills that you kind of need to develop if you're going to play ball in that arena and maintain sanity. I just looked him up, by the way. He was born in January, and interestingly enough, passed away on my birthday.
Oh, yeah. Well, one of those markers in life.
Yeah, just a little bit before I was supposed to speak at a sci-fi con, in fact. So that was quite an interesting time.
I want to ask about the hyphenate thing. So we got how you got into it. Have you ever found yourself at odds with your hyphenated selves while doing one particular function? So, say as an actor. Yeah, you're doing it, but then the director side of you, well, this is how I would do it. I think this would be so much better, or vice versa. Because I was a photographer for a long time, and did a lot of wedding photography, and I would go to weddings, and I'd be part of the wedding party or stuff, and I'd be watching. I'm like, oh, I just want to tell him no, don't do that. But it was so hard to keep from annoying, because it's like, well, this is his thing.
Right.
And he's got his thing going. I got my thing going, and I'm not the photographer. Have you ever run into that kind of mental battle? And
sure.
And how do you deal with it?
Well, I think a lot of it comes down to compartmentalization and discipline. When I walk onto a set as an actor, my job is to act. And of course, I'll make mental notes about, I would do this differently, or, maybe I should make this suggestion or that suggestion. That's not my job at that moment. And so I'll make these notes, and I'll make them largely so that I can learn from them. Kind of like, okay, I see this as going this way. Based on my experience, this may or may not work out. Here's the way I would have done it differently. Let's just keep that in our mind, so that, as I'm doing my next directing gig or so on, I might approach this differently, or I might notice, I'm not sure if that angle is going to work so well for this scene. But at the end of the day, that I am not the painter here.
Okay.
I am a brush, and I'm going to be a very autonomous and very good brush, but I'm also working under the guidance of a painter who has the bigger picture in mind, and it's not my job to look at the bigger picture. So if I'm asked, sure, I'll give my opinion on something, and I'll give it as best I can from the standpoint of, well, here's what I think. It is, but you must remember to give proper deference to each department head, and ultimately to the creative head, who's the director, and or the producers, who are the business head of the entity, and do your part to the best of your ability. Because if you start trying to play other people's parts, well, that doesn't go well in acting either. You've got to trust that team is going to meet their vision. Now, occasionally, because some of the people I work with, I've become very good friends with, and they know about my skill sets. Occasionally, they will ask my opinion on things or my advice on, hey, just give me a second set of ears here, second brain. Tell me what you think about X, and I'll tell them. And sometimes they'll go with my opinion on it, and sometimes they won't. Not my job to make the decision for them. And so I really try to just set it aside, because, again, it's not my painting. When it's my painting, then I'll make those decisions, and I ask everyone else to respect my decisions on that, just as I want to hear their feedback. but they, so when I work as a director or producer, I also really try hard to set an environment where everyone knows that in an appropriate setting and given in an appropriate way, there is feedback I'd like to have. And oftentimes, I've gotten feedback from someone that really changed my game, made it better, Okay. So I don't want to discount that, but at the same time, we must maintain a proper leadership structure, because if that breaks down, if I'm a lead actor in something and the other performers, especially if they're younger or newer performers who are not used to set etiquette and set culture, see me directly bucking the director, the whole hierarchy emotionally can fall apart. I can't let that happen. So part of my responsibility when I'm playing a lead role is to lead also emotionally a bit and show that, okay, I'm part of the team here and I'm playing my part and not overstepping my bounds. And giving proper respect to people who need to make the right decisions on things. Then on the other hand, when I've worked as a director, the whole thing is flipped. I'm thinking about how I would approach as an actor, and someone may be approaching differently or not giving me the performance I'm hoping for, and I'm not going to line read them. I'm not going to try to step in and play the role for them. My job there, as I see it, and every director has a different way of working. I've worked with directors who, wanted me to basically be a meat puppet, and hey, that's their right. If they're the director, that's their right. They run their set their way. I'll do my best to be a good meat puppet in that particular circumstance. Even though it kind of irks me a little, I'll still do it, and I won't raise a fuss about it. On the other hand, I've worked with directors like, say, Alex, for example, who, really want you to bring what you bring and then to work with you on it. And so I try to be that as a director, where if I'm not seeing what I need, then I'll try to help the actor get there, or get somewhere that feels good, even if it's not what I originally envisioned, as long as it fits the picture, as long as it matches the tone, as long as it works, then I'm good. And that's that again, where I find where if I try to step into their shoes and play their role for them, sort of, I end up missing some of their genius, which is why I have them in the first place. I end up missing some of their perspective, what they bring after they've spent the time to build their character.
Right.
That maybe if I was also producing the thing, I may have even been writing the thing. I may know this character super well and have some strong opinions about how they should be portrayed. And then suddenly I'm getting something different. So I do this check. Wait a second. Okay, I'm getting something different. That bothers me. Why does it bother me? Is it working? And sometimes, well, holy crap, it is working. It's not what I was thinking, but this is actually better. This is actually playing really well, and it's working with the other characters. It's working with the interplay. So let's go with this, And other times it's like, I don't know where you got a Scottish accent from someone who's in Alabama, but this isn't playing right. Let's step back and let's talk about why you're doing this, and let's see if we can figure out what's going to work here. So it's so I'm aware, but I really, really try hard not to get in the way. And honestly, there have been times where I've been in a project and I could see things were not going well, and I could see things were not going to go well, and I wasn't asked, and it didn't seem appropriate for me to give an opinion, and I just let it be, and it didn't go well, and it was crap. But that's not my job, again, in that particular perspective when I'm an actor. Other times I wasn't really sure. It was like, I don't know if it's going to work. And okay, well, just do your job, Eric. Just do your job. Stay in character, do your job. And it was brilliant, but super well. So, that's one of the things that you've got to do is you do your part and you let go and let everyone else do their part. And it'll be what it'll be.
Paul Newman, in an interview, he didn't name the film or the director because, he was classy that way. But he talked about being the lead role on set, and he touched on what you said about, part of the responsibility is to, carry the emotional tone for the other actors.
Right.
And he said that more than one occasion, he was just completely at odds with the director, but with the direction and everything. But he summed it up as, at this point in the game, it's my name that they're paying for, not my talent. And I know that. So all these people, especially people who this is their first or second major role, are looking to me. And he understood the whole hierarchy thing that you mentioned. Yeah. You have to, unless it's an absolute toilet tank disaster, I mean, of comedic proportions, to support the director's vision, to support, your role and show confidence in where we're creating this thing. And we may not understand it, but that's not why we're here.
And I think that's a really key, like my dad early in my training explained to me that it's not official when you're a lead actor. It's not like you're somebody else's boss or anything. It's not like you have a managerial responsibility for other actors or something. Not in the least. They're all doing their part. They're all playing their role. They're their own little world like you are. Mm-hmm. But that being said, it is natural that when you're a lead, people do tend to look up to you, sort of. They look at you and they go, okay, this is the lead, so I should just subconsciously, there's a little bit of that, whatever this person, for lack of better words, gets away with, whatever this person does, gives me clues as to how I should behave. And so I'm acutely aware of that at all times. And so regardless of the fact that there's nothing official there, exactly that models, I try to be cordial and professional at all times. I try to bring my A game at all times, because there is that possibility that someone else, especially, someone who's in the early stages of their career, could look at me and go, okay, that's what, that's fine. That's good enough. I don't have a good enough. Right. And I don't want them to see someone that has a good enough and think that, if they haven't played a lead before, that this is how you get there. Mind you, sure, yeah, we all hear famous stories about famous actors who screw off and do all kinds of screwy things. That's their issue, and some of those people still give great performances. I'm not going to argue that. It's just not my way. Right. So I play it the way I believe it should be played, in my opinion. And if I'm on a set with somebody who's completely goofing off all the time, that's their issue. You're not going to see that from me.
I think that I've noticed in a lot of the people that we've talked to, and you especially, because you're doing, your production company, you're directing, you're writing, you're acting, you're doing all this stuff, that people who do this kind of thing and play this like many hyphenated role in the industry have to have a certain quality about them that isn't very common in normal people, which is that they have to be almost, I hate this word, but it's like plasticine, right? You have to be moldable and flexible and adaptable and durable, most importantly, in order to kind of shape yourself to all the different roles that you have to fill.
And in the circumstances those roles bring on, because as a director, you have to be adaptable. I just recently was talking about, the battle between vision and budget is a daily thing.
Oh, God, yeah.
Hey, I'd like to do this. No, we can't afford the extra 20 minutes today. We can't, And so do you rob from Peter to pay Paul? Do you do that whole thing? Or, you got to do that. And as an actor, so yeah, you have to be pliable, not just in the roles, but in the varying ways you have to handle that to be flexible and adaptable in each of those for their unique issues.
Right. But if you ask kind of a normal everyday person to just completely pivot.
The normals.
All those normies. To completely pivot,
No, we like to call them muggles.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I love it. Are you a Harry Potter fan?
Oh, of course.
Yes.
You scored big with Danny.
To clarify, I mean, look, one of my formative experiences I just talked about came from visiting a sci-fi convention when I was a kid. I'm a raging geek. And yes, definitely a Harry Potter fan. I've read all the books. I've watched all the movies. I have a wand. Come on, yeah.
Okay. Hot button topic. Do you think The Cursed Child is canon?
I have not been exposed to it, so I can't. I haven't seen it, so I can't answer that question.
I haven't seen it, and I haven't read it, and I'm very opinionated on it. I think that it is not canon.
But that being said, Rowling wrote it, so maybe.
Did she write the play?
Didn't she?
No, she didn't write the play.
Oh, well, then maybe I'm wrong.
Someone else did it with her permission.
Okay, my bad.
I think it was like the first permission-granted license third-party work.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because she's done. She doesn't want to do anymore.
I'm afraid I can't answer that question then. So, I can't give a reasonable opinion on
that. Well, we're hardcore geeks too. I mean, I'm not a Harry Potter fan, which always makes for interesting conversations. But we have all the books, several sets of the books, collector set, and the reading set. You know, our daughter is heavily into it, so it's 2-on-1 constantly.
Mm-hmm. I'll win you over.
Well, but I mean, I have unopened collector's Star Trek Pez right there next to you. I mean, our office here is full of stuff, and I just bought a Boba Fett Mandalorian bounty hunter backpack because they were back in stock. You know, it's lovely living in that as a geek, and then to be involved in this aspect of it.
Yeah.
This is heaven. The only thing that would be better would be earning a paycheck from it. But
that is nice when it happens, isn't it? Yeah.
It's it's a marathon.
Yeah. Right. I like that part too. I like that part too. You know, that is also one of the things that I think that should be kept in mind for those who are considering getting into the entertainment industry, is that earning of a paycheck, and a reasonable one, is an extremely difficult thing to do. It's not, the mass majority, for example, of the actors out there are, either hardly ever working or living very much hand to mouth. And of course, during this current pandemic, which is going on, many of the ones who were just kind of making ends meet by doing acting roles alone, that's a rare thing, aren't anymore. And and then there's really a lot of distance from actor beginning to actor, who you see in big major motion pictures and who's raking in cash at all times, and even that is a precarious place often, as tastes change, and the same with filmmaking. But that being said, having multiple skills is also useful in maintaining, in staying afloat and in getting ahead of the game, and that's also one of the reasons that I produce, is that when you have, particularly if you're a creator of a project, if you have some degree of ownership of the licensure, you have an income source potentially from it. That so multiple income streams is a great idea when you're in the entertainment industry. So the more skills you have, the more likely you are to get multiple income sources.
That's
and
very
it's even
true.
better if you own the work. And
we have talked about the as writers, the overnight success stories are plentiful, but the truth behind them are all absolutely false.
It's not overnight.
It's like the bucket list. Okay, the bucket list. They got $2 million for that script, and it was an overnight success that was a little over 6 years in the making.
It's a long night.
And like all of them, it's a dreadful 6 years. 6 years of nope, not interested. It's terrible. Wouldn't touch this. Nope. Try again. And then, it's that right time, right place, right person, right mood. Boom. Exactly. I love this idea.
Yeah.
Can I see what you wrote? I love this. Let's talk about this.
And then so many other barriers from the pre-production to the actually shooting, to the post-production, to pickups, to, release, to successful release, to, it's an intense and incredible process. And the less money you have to do it, the more difficult it is, because you just have less, let's face it, you launch an indie film and you maybe have a marketing budget for it. Well, the larger Hollywood productions will drop $250,000 or more in a single day just on social media advertising.
Right.
And a small indie film, not remotely close to that.
I could shoot my whole 5-part movie for $250,000. That's what they're thinking.
Right. Yeah. So this is a very challenging field, as we've said, and then of course the more groundbreaking the work you want to do, the more difficult it is.
Oh, exactly. Well, that brings a good question, because people don't realize how many Hollywood projects, creating projects, period, die on the vine. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was younger watching all these documentaries in Hollywood to learn that there are actual warehouses, literal vaults of stuff that has never and will never see the light of day.
Yep.
Finished films. I mean, we're talking Golden Master, and then all of a sudden someone decided, nah, and
not
then
today.
It's gone. Have you been in, or have you had to helm a Die on the Vine project at all?
Not as of yet. I mean, I've had projects that haven't released yet for various reasons. For example, there was one in particular really fantastic project that I was working on with my former business partner, the quite brilliant media personality Don Dem, who was the founder of Sealy Studios, my company. And we spent quite some time developing and working with the writing team and shooting it. And as we were getting ready to, as we were in the early stages of post-production, he had a variety of disasters in his life. The most difficult of which was when he came down with cancer and passed away. So that was. So that particular project has fallen far behind for some reasons beyond my control, and there have been other projects that never made it to production for one reason or another. Maybe another partnership fell apart, or there was a rights issue or something. But as of yet, nothing that has actually been completed and been completely shelved, so to speak. There's one feature that I'm hoping will get release in the not too distant future, but but basically everything that has been finished has gotten out there in some way, shape, or form so far, well,
that's good.
So far, yeah. Well, I think it's also it's important to note as well that the indie film world is quite different and than the big studio world, and which is the majority of my work has been in the indie film world, and there are a lot more options now, just over the past 5-10 years, than there ever have been on how you release. I mean, if you're not able to get a traditional distributor to release, then you can do it yourself.
Right.
It may not be as efficient as a release, but then who the heck knows? Some people are just genius at self-release, so it could go far. It's the world of audience dissemination is entirely different, and that's become even more clear during this pandemic, where now people are able to pick exactly what they want to watch, when they want to watch it, and how they want to watch it. Yep. That's totally different than there being only a few possible ways of release that are going to be controlled by another company, no matter what you do. So at the end of the day, if you can't find the right release structure, then there are plenty of options for you, as long as you can have some idea of how to play the game by yourself.
Right. I find it interesting that Hollywood is actually following the book publishing world, which was 20 years ahead of this, where a lot of number one bestsellers, started out as a self-published little, basically indie, publishing for authors. And it's that whole thing of, well, this guy, hey, I saw this book in a local bookstore, right? And from what I understand, he sold like 8,000 copies locally and, more, elsewhere. We might want to take a look at this, and then they approach and strike a new deal, and the publisher puts it out in the mainstream, and it does well.
Yeah.
It's kind of refreshing, because I know indie film has been around forever. I mean, Hollywood was indie film studios. There were so many studios. I couldn't even begin to count off the dozens and dozens of names of studios that started putting out things, like Charlie Chaplin films and Buster Keaton and, all this stuff. And then they either faded or all
they
got
were
together,
absorbed into one of the like 4 that exist now.
Yeah, it all was partnerships and growth and decisions and things. But yeah, the metamorphosis of it. I just love that now today indie filmmakers have that ability to basically create their IP. So this film has been out. It's been on, video on demand. Numbers look good. There's some followings. We might do well to put a little bit of money into this to distribute it, because we could get a decent return on it, being as the full upfront cost has been absorbed by the guy who made it. Now we're just talking distribution. It is kind of cool, and you do have to be savvy to try and make the most of it, because it's super easy to just, you log in, create your account, and point, click, boom. Now you're on Vimeo. Now, but what do you want to do with it?
Right. Yeah, I also think that those kind of vaults of never seen, finished projects are gonna get. I mean, maybe not those ones, but there's not going to be a lot added to that, because especially in the indie making world, when we make a movie, even if it doesn't look like we're going to make money on it, we still want to put it out there.
Sure.
Well, yeah, because it's the stepping stone. Nobody wants, a lot of people, that first role is like, I really don't want to play this character, or I've got less than 5 seconds in the whole thing. But you do it, one, because it's a teeny tiny paycheck, hopefully. But it's that, one notch. All right.
Sure.
I've got my toe in the door. Next one, I'll get all 5 toes. Next one will be, foot up to the ankle. And pretty soon I'll be in.
Yeah. Well, that's in is a funny thing. It's more like, I guess a flowing thing, I suppose you could say. But I always try to tell people, if you're going to get into any aspect of this industry, you should be thinking about the long game. And try to develop a strategy for your career path, and understand that strategy is going to adapt based on what you're offered, what happens with a certain project or another, but always think about that long game. If you're going for if you're thinking about instant success, then unless you came into this already very well known or very wealthy, which really does change the game entirely.
Right.
You want to think about that long career path, and what each step in your career path means, and how you now adapt your strategy based on what's happened for you. So it's I think that's another thing that a lot of people in the entertainment industry initially get in, and they think it'll just be like flipping a light switch, and suddenly I'll be famous and everything will be groovy and I'll be making lots of money and I'll be able to live the life I've always wanted and play the roles I've always wanted. And I know very few people have had that experience. It's usually over time you build a reputation. Over time people become slowly familiar with your work, and every once in a while somebody gets really lucky and nails a really prominent part in something big, and that can be a career changer. But it's usually after quite a while of going at it, and getting those opportunities, especially if you're starting from a point of being relatively unknown and not well moneyed, is a process where casting directors figure out whether they can trust you. They figure out whether your work is trustworthy, and especially if it's a large role, there are a lot of considerations that go into whether or not you can handle it. Because you're asking a lot of somebody to work a lot of lines, be on set a lot. They've got to be, in theory, reliable and able to pull it off, and hopefully be kind of pleasant to work with. So it's and so it is with film. It's all a matter of thinking that long-term growth strategy, and everything that you do plays into the next thing.
Well, even small projects, big roles, like lead roles in small projects. I use Star Wars as the ultimate example of a B movie that just went wildly, atmospheric, because it was a throwaway budget. They really didn't give Lucas a lot of support, which is why they never signed any legal documents, which is why he is the king of Star Wars, because he owns 100% of it. They're like, just go do your thing, because he had THX 1138, he had American Graffiti, but actors in there like Harrison Ford, I try to illustrate to people, okay, so he was a carpenter and a lot of other things full time, and the acting thing was part time until Star Wars came along, and then boom, nobody would have even dreamt that it hit the level that it did.
They famously said that after doing American Graffiti, which was prior to Star Wars, that he reported for work the next day.
Yeah.
and figured, oh, well, that was cool. That was great. And that was that. And then they got this call for Star Wars, and nobody except George Lucas knew what it was going to be.
Yeah.
He was the guy with the vision who really understood what was happening there.
And then you get Mark Hamill, who, scored that's the one that we're talking about. That's that moment everyone looks for. But even then it wasn't, super huge, because then he did Corvette Summer, which was met with very mixed reviews after that, and basically the Star Wars the original trilogy carried these people onto everything else. And of course, Harrison Ford, God bless him. He is the most rugged look. No one else could have played Indiana Jones. He has that rugged look about him, which has made his roles work. And plus he knew George Lucas, and, from there. But yeah, those are few and far between. Those are the moments we all aspire to. It's the winning lottery number, really, but you got to keep playing the ticket, which means you got to keep taking the parts. You got to give your best, do the best you can, piecing this together in terms of if you're doing the performance or you're editing the thing, or you're trying to get people to hit their marks and, put on screen the best that they can through you. And
I think one of the other important factors there, and we've talked quite a bit about how difficult this is emotionally and financially and in every other way, but I think it's also important to note that most of the people I know who are in the industry are just kind of eternal optimists. Some may become grumpy, or or start to outwardly not believe a lot of things, maybe cynical, and I have my moments of being cynical as well. But at the end of the day, there's this part of you, if you're really in this, where you're so desperate for the creation of it, and you so desperately want to make something of value that you're still willing to pick up your sword and go do it, because at the end of even when you're outwardly very cynical, you still have this certain degree of optimism that it's all worth it.
Right.
And that's the thing, is that sometimes it really is. That what I think a lot of people also don't realize, if they're not in the industry, is how little time is actually spent on a set.
Right.
Actually playing a role or shooting a film. How much of the time is spent in, depending upon what part of the production you're involved in the development phase, in the pitching phase, in the pre-production phase, in the post-production phase, in the marketing phase, and release phase. The actual production time is really short, and even for longer productions that I've been involved in, it's a blip, and you get these moments where it's like, wow, that was amazing, and now it's over. And
we're actually explaining that to our daughter. We just introduced her to the world of James Bond, and we're starting with the Daniel Craig Bonds.
On the rock, shaken, not stirred.
Sorry,
had to do that.
I know, I just can't help. I'm always doing it. I'm like, back in the day when Sean Connery, who was the Bond, was under that time, Mrs. Moneypenny.
Well, we're starting out with the Daniel Craig stuff, and then we're going to work our way backwards, just because the Sean Connery ones and the very early ones are really, really sexist. And she's only 11.
I hadn't noticed that.
And so. And so kind of, we're working back towards that and helping her to understand that it's gotten,
we're giving her
better.
The mildly misogynistic Bond before we throw her into the pool with the piranha
Not to derail you, but I do want to make a note about that, which is, art is art, right?
Right.
Well, it
and
is.
So I mean, not all art is for every audience, and so I think so. Personally, there is art out there that personally offends me, and bravo to them. They made art, and I think that's also an important thing to note is that art can be offensive, and I'm not going to put my money and my energy into things that I find offensive, and I'll walk away from a production if I think it's offensive. In fact, if it's offered to me. But that being said, I'll also play a character I hate because I think it's important to give, to do that. So it depends on the piece of art. So I think it is worth noting that that it's actually okay for something that's extremely misogynistic to exist, because it's a piece of art and it does its particular job, and that's someone's expression, and that's something that some audience will enjoy.
Right.
Well, and art to put the message that you believe in out there.
Art is a time capsule. All art. I mean, look at art throughout history. You can get a sense of, I mean, just in the fashion, in the way things were perceived. True. So yeah, I mean, we love James Bond, and if anything else, it's well, this is what it was to be a sexy secret agent back then as compared to now. But it also, as an artist looking at art, it's wildly fascinating to see where we are, because James Bond is one of those few legacies in film that you can follow for 50 years, the decades of change, social perception, how things are presented, what's okay, what's not okay, how they push the envelope, what was risque back then.
And also, it should be noted as well that it's just fun. I mean, if you can kind of, if you can, set aside some of the misogynistic aspects of it and look at it as just kind of, this is kind of goofy fun. We're all going to just pretend for a little while that we exist in a world where things are like this, then, as long as you don't put too much into it then it's still a fun ride.
It is. And she was hooked 40 minutes in. We paused it just to check in and see, how you like it. Hit play. So, and we're 3 movies
sorry,
in.
I didn't mean to derail you there. Yeah.
Oh, no. We're 3 movies in. So we just finished Skyfall. So we're going to watch Quantum of Solace next. And she loves it. And she made a comment, because we actually just watched Skyfall last night. So at the end, she just made a comment about, because we're talking about Daniel Craig's doing another Bond film, and then he's going to be done. And we've talked about why there's so many James Bonds and all these years. And she just made the comment that, it doesn't take long. Once they're done, they can just get this out there. We're like, no. We explain this in a film like this, after principal shooting, you have at least 1 year of everything that goes into it, the editing, layering the sound, the special effects, and all of that. And that really depends on how much
pickups, et cetera, et cetera. Sorry.
Yeah. Everything. Yeah. I said, when just because they're done shooting a movie, that's filming. The actual making the movie comes after that, because that's just one piece of many pieces they got to put together to layer this puzzle. And she's like, oh, huh.
Yeah.
Well, they did a good job. I think they did too. But it's fascinating, because she's in the short that we did a while ago, and she never understood the whole concept of, like you said, you spend so little time on set, but you can be on set all day for that 30-second shot, depending how they have it scheduled and why you're there. She's in the background. She has a shot under a table, which we shot separately from the restaurant. So in 6 months in between that, she's like, why are we doing this? We just did the restaurant. Well, because you gotta act for a minute. And we were there for hours.
Yep.
It's not because she was terrible.
Right.
She didn't even speak. She just shook her head and looked angry, which she did beautifully. But she kind of, she's getting a sense of the filmmaking part. And we're trying to get her exposed to the writing part. We wrote a movie actually just for her, because all of our scripts are not for 11-year-olds. And it actually made me think, because she's like, can I help with a script read? Because after we write, we read it, we do our own little reads so we can hear it and, make changes and stuff. And she always asked if she could help. We said, no, it's not for you. And it actually reminded me of what Stephen King had said, why he wrote Dragon Eyes, because he realized he's built a whole career on stuff that he can't share with his daughter. He can't read her those books because she was not a horror fan as a little kid. So he wrote Dragon Eyes, which kind of was just weird enough in places to tickle adults, but suitable for her. And I thought, we need to get on that. We need to get on that. And she loved it. She loved reading the lead in that script when it was done. Of course, it was a long 6-8 months. You guys done yet? No. You guys done yet? No.
Yep.
What I want to ask, kind of as a closing soliloquy for listeners and everyone out there, either
a soliloquy.
The soliloquy. What would you put out to everybody? And I hate to focus on this, but it is the reality. So with the lockdowns and the uncertainty, things opening up, may having to close again, all that stuff. In this time and moving forward, what would you advise someone you were mentoring, or just as common advice, how to just pick up and start running with whatever they're doing, directing, producing, acting, writing? How would you, if you could, I don't want to say manipulate that world, but if you could sculpt it so that people could start running, what would that sculpture look like? What would you...
how do you mean exactly? Like
what because it's easy to say, hey, because I've said a few times, if you're at home, create. If you've got a phone, if you've got a smartphone, you can create. Okay? It doesn't have to be a masterpiece, and not everything you do has to have the Oscar in mind. But you can spend this time, stretching yourself out, moving forward without staying idle. But now we're getting to the point where we're realistically starting to look at things loosening up. And people starting to get out and do things. I guess if you had advice, it's a kind of an open-ended thing. What would you advise? How would that be different than before all this happened?
Yeah. Well, I guess to start, depends on what part of the industry or not in the industry, and maybe wanting to be in the industry you're in. There are a lot of folks who are just desperately trying to figure out how they're going to pay bills right now.
Right.
And I think it is important to try to look at the way things are in the world and make some guesses as to the way things will go. We're, as you said, looking at things opening up, and while I have no specific scientific expertise in virology at all, reading what the virologists are saying and looking at history, if we start to reopen things up and people get, too lax about it, then the virus, the COVID-19, is going to get much, much worse, and a lot more people are going to die. So first off, if you're dedicated to a career in the arts, don't rush it.
Okay.
Be careful. Be careful. This is similar to advice that my dad gave me, which when I played Doc Holliday, I completely ignored, and I shouldn't have. Which was at least this part of the advice, which was that part of your responsibility as a performer is to take care of your physical body so that you can perform. You can't do your job if you're sick. You can't do your job if you're injured or not as well. I've done work when I was in pretty bad shape at points because there was no other way to get it done. Did a play once, the last 2 days of a play that I was a lead in with bronchitis that was so severe I could barely stand up, and I managed to get through the performance for 2 days. And then I spent like 2 weeks recovering and, seeing doctors so that I could breathe. But I think it's important to, one, remember your physical health and don't jump when everyone else is jumping unless you think you can do that safely. You do have to stay alive, though. You do have to bring in income. So if you're going to do that, do everything you can to be safe when you're doing that. Whatever job you have to take in order to keep things afloat, and be very careful. In the meantime, before things are entirely open, depending upon the state that you're in, and or if you happen to have the luxury of not having to rush out right away and go out into the world and expose yourself when we're still not sure what's going to happen, when we're still not sure whether it's safe, then, or if you happen to be in one of the states that's going to stay in lockdown for a while, then you have to be gentle with yourself on one side, and understand that it is well, this isn't exactly being confined in solitary in prison or something, so it's not that level of emotional hit. It's still difficult for people to go from feeling the sense of freedom and the sense of being out in the world and being able, and having limitless possibilities, to being very constrained and having the same walls to look at all the time. So you've got to be a little gentle with yourself, but there's balance to that. You also have to, work on discipline. This is a good time to do that, and figure out what your groove is in terms of keeping your skills sharp or building skills. Maybe you just find some scripts online if you're an actor and start working them. Maybe you start reworking your marketing materials, like your website and so on. Maybe you start planning your attack. Maybe you're networking with people, such as people who can get you work. If you're a filmmaker, you can be honing the putting together of your next works. It depends on what stage you're in, but I think that it's important to have to seek a balance where you are paying attention to your emotional well-being, and you're also not giving yourself so much slack room that you just are not productive and don't take advantage of whatever the situation presents. And that's the thing. The entertainment industry is an industry, and it's a business, and as well as an art. And as I've been quoted on before, in the business world, you adapt or you die. In fact, this is exactly how humanity has managed to survive when humans don't have big teeth and big claws and the toughest hides and all that stuff, is the amazing ability to adapt. So be good at that and adapt and see, okay, this door has closed. What door is opened? What can I get creative? As I said in a couple interviews recently, this is a good time as a creator to get creative and see what can you put your energy into, and how can you create a new business model or a new strategy. How can you be especially prepared for things to open? There are auditions still happening online for actors. There is film planning happening now, because everyone knows that things are going to open up in some way in the near future.
Right.
Whether the near future is maybe everything opens up in the short term and by some amazing set of circumstances it's all kind of fine-ish, or maybe everything opens up and it isn't at all fine and it shuts down hard again. At some point we'll figure out a way to get back on sets, and we'll figure out a way to start getting into production again. So be thinking this stuff through, or how can you adapt your skills to something else? And it's important to just work at adapting.
Almost like getting ahead of the curve. Because I've thought, and we've mentioned, this is an excellent time to, do things a little bit different, stretch yourself out. Who knows what permanent changes this will provide for Hollywood in general, if any, in the long run. But I think that's, this is an excellent time to try and look ahead. So what
it is
like Saturday Night Live is doing shows from home. So as an actor, just for fun, how would I interact if this was the future? My playing a part is now going to be all dressed up with a green screen behind me and in front of a camera by myself in my own little room. And it's going to be mixed together with other people. How would I do that? And, I think it's not only fun because we challenge ourselves with all kinds of silly little things.
Yeah.
But I think, that would be
somebody went out there, as everyone knows, and a few years ago took out an iPhone and made a feature film, and it did crazy well on the festival circuit, and and then it got out into the mainstream. That was somebody who looked at the tools they had in front of them and said, "Hey, let's do something different," and they innovated, and they happened to guess right. So think about to quote my Kung Fu Grandmaster again, have wings of mind, and think about what the possibilities are, and see if you can come up with a new approach that might just be interesting enough to get interest from people based on what you have in front of you. It's honestly, when I first started actually doing the process of making films, a lot of it came down to, all right, well, what do we have? What can we get a hold of? I mean, when when you're starting out, when you're relatively unknown and you don't have financial backing yet, well, what can we make?
Yeah.
What can I do? And what tools do I have to get it done? And that's, if you think about it, the entire history of the entertainment industry has been based on exactly that. I mean, hey, this isn't working. How do we make it work? Hey, you got some string? And then you figure it out. It's So this is it, and also to your point about getting ahead of the curve. That's something that I've always tried to do, is to look at. I'm a sci-fi fan, so I try to do my own form of predictive analytics and sort of go, okay, let's look at the possible futures here. Let's look at the way things could be, and I've been in a number of circumstances where I've made predictions about things where friends of mine in the entertainment industry have said, you're absolutely nuts, it won't work that way. And then a year later they call me and say, we need to talk because the thing you just said was going to happen just happened. So now let's see if we can figure out what to do about it. And, that's just a matter of sitting there and trying to think about the possibilities and let go of what I want things to be, and instead think about what could be and how I would adapt to that. And that is a lot of being an actor, in fact, where you may work your lines and work your character and the way that they might respond to the other person. If you're, like, as many times on movie sets, you don't have time to rehearse, you just go on set and you do it. And then you get to the set and somebody hands you a different emotional performance than you were prepared for. That's one of the reasons I go out in public and be that character, because I'm not reacting based on the prescribed, I think that they're going to come at me with this type of emotional response. I'm responding based on, I know who my character is, and therefore they're going to respond to what I'm just handed. And so it is with life, except we also try to anticipate a little bit about, okay, we know that that artificial intelligence is a thing, and it's becoming more and more prevalent in the overall business world, and it's just a matter of time, as all the great sci-fi authors have told us, before more things are automated and less jobs that are traditionally manual labor type jobs that were handled by individuals are going to be done by humans. So if that's the case, that may be accelerated due to this pandemic.
I just hope that it doesn't get to the point where HAL is making the budget cuts, because those can be some severe.
I'm sorry, Dave, but you're fired.
Not only can we not support your role, but your existence in general is cost prohibitive. Goodbye, Dave.
Pretty much, yeah. But so then what do you do? I mean, if you know that that's a possible future, and you're in an industry where you're in a manual labor industry, or what was once a craft intensive industry where certain things were done by humans that may not be in the future, are you going to plan for just things being the way they always have been and nothing ever changing, or are you going to think about, well, what if, and if that's the case, what would I do, and should I be prepared for this? And even if you choose to just keep going on as if things are going to stay the same, and maybe they do, What if they don't? And you
Right.
had the opportunity to get ahead of things. So when it comes to our filmmaking work, I've always been, thinking, what's the latest innovation? Can we get a hold of it? Is it useful to us? Can we afford it? Or is there some other way that we can get at the same approach? How can we make our job more efficient? Every single project I come on board with, because technology is changing so quickly, if I'm on the producer side or the director side, I'm asking my team, how do we make this better? How do we make this more efficient? What can we do to make it a better project and make it more cost effective while not cutting good corners we shouldn't cut, because that's part of being competitive, and it's part of doing better work, and that's what we should be asking ourselves about everything. So we don't know what's going to happen in the near future with the pandemic, although we have some good clues based on history of what is likely. You look at what happened in 1918 with the Spanish flu, and things were opened up too quickly, and a lot more people got sick, and a lot more people died, and that's what happened. Will it be the same with this? I couldn't tell you. Most of the virologists are saying, yeah, it probably will. And yet at the same time, we do have to realize that there's an economy, that people do have to eat. So, and we have to keep an infrastructure afloat. How is that going to be done? I don't know. There doesn't seem to be a lot of agreement between people.
Right.
And a lot of politics are getting involved, which is dangerous. But for each individual themselves, be aware of what these possibilities are and try to make the best decisions that you can, and based on anticipating what the probable outcomes will be, and weighing and balancing what's the important factors, like, yes, I wish I could stay in a bubble suit inside my house all the time, but how am I going to get food,
Right.
So, or how am I going to pay for that food? And the same with your career. Anticipate that once we do get back to going on sets, based on a lot of the planning that's been going on by every level of the entertainment industry, that things are going to take longer, that there will be careful social distancing and sanitization practices for quite some time, possibly the foreseeable future. Tyler Perry was one of the people who was talking recently about the possibility of sequestering people for a couple of weeks before shooting in hotel rooms, and they're not allowed to leave that room. Okay. And so that's a possibility. Now, the challenge therein, however, is that the mass majority of people who work in the industry, that's not their only job.
Right.
So yeah, they're either quitting a job that they can throw away for each gig, or they're taking vacation time or something. And then there are the few who this is their only job, but they're not doing any other work while they're stuck in a hotel room for 2 weeks. Presumably they're getting paid for that, but not everyone can do that. So that may limit the number of people who can actually work, especially if they're not, in leading roles. It will certainly increase film budgets, as will all of the sanitization processes. So that has to be built into your film budget. If you're going to be on a set at any time before science has figured out how to more conclusively deal with this particular pandemic and the next one, because there's one about every 5 to 10 years of some sort, that's just science. Sorry. And if anyone doesn't believe me, then just I read a book. So now that we're hyper aware of this at the moment, if you're planning a film, plan for this. Understand that it is your responsibility to do everything in your power within your means to keep your people safe from whatever comes. Just as if I'm planning a stunt, then I'm going to try to find qualified people to do the stunt and give them the tools they need to do it safely. And even on a small indie project I did recently, where I had an actor do a small stunt, very small stunt, I might add. I didn't let them do it until I'd done it 10 times.
Okay.
And that, because that was my responsibility.
Right.
If they walk away from that, fine. And mind you, you would typically let an actual stunt person do that part. But but so anyway, so this is the deal: is be prepared for a different looking industry that will be where everyone's trying to figure it out. And depending upon where you are in the industry and what your responsibilities are, don't just try to walk back into everything being normal as it used to be. Anticipate, as an actor, most of your auditions are going to happen online. Well, they kind of already were. So that shouldn't be that hard to shift. Make sure you have the gear to do self-tapes. Make sure you learn about how to do self-tapes well. Try to also anticipate what other people in the industry are going through. If you this will help you to mitigate your own frustration about things and basically just to be a better player. As I understand, because I've played all sides of the industry at this point, I know what a casting director is dealing with. I know exactly what they are. I know what a director's dealing with. I know what a production assistant's dealing with. I know what the AD's dealing with. I'm not don't ever hire me as an AD, by the way. I am not good at that job. I'm not going to take it. Nor a cinematographer, but I know how to find good ones. And I know enough about what they do to have compassion for the work and how difficult it is. And to then be able, I'm kind of rambling at this point, but as an actor, I know I've run a camera. I'm not great at it. I'm not going to hire myself to do it. I'm not going to take the gig if you ask me to do it. But I've run a camera and I've worked with cinematographers and camera people. I know a lot about what their job is. So as an actor, because I know that, I also know how to perform for the camera. And I also know how to give them what they need. And I know how to make their job easier. So also as a director, I know what they do. So I know how to give them instructions that they can understand and give them enough creative freedom to get their jobs done. And as I anticipate what's going to happen as we're getting back on sets and being extremely cautious about things, I also know how that's going to change their world. So I'm going to then adapt my behavior so that their job is easier. So we as a unit work better.
Excellent.
Well,
that's a lot of stuff. Well, but it's good.
It is good.
It's, listen up, folks, and, do it, because that's the whole thing about moving forward.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Eric, thank you so very much for giving us so much of your time. This has been amazing, and you are like a font of amazing sage advice. I think anyone that you mentor is really lucky to have you as a mentor.
That's awfully kind of you to say. Thanks.
It's very true.
Do my best.
We are as we close with what we should do as things start to get to normalcy. We are looking forward to some degree of normalcy where you are able to finish the things you're working on, because we want to see them.
Nice.
Yes.
I want you to see them. I think you're going to love the next. I think you're going to love the next stuff. There's some really good stuff coming. I'm excited about it.
We're going to keep in touch, and because that's one of the things we do is we like to promote. We've warned everybody that this podcast, we deliberately chose the smallest audience possible on the planet.
Right, the most niche,
new coming
highly
creatives,
specific audience.
But yeah, we like to push it out there because we like to support B movies, indie film, because we've always believed that's where the most of the best that any creativity has to offer has come from.
That's where the heart of the industry is. Varying
things. But yeah, it's. We're going to get stuff out there.
Well, thank you guys for. Sorry, I don't mean to interrupt.
That's fine.
I just want to say also thank you guys for doing that, and also for targeting to that audience. I absolutely love speaking in front of folks who are newer in the industry, who are just getting their feet wet, or who are navigating things in the industry, because that's again, I've been mentored by so many people, and I really love sharing information that could be useful, hoping it can be useful. And I agree with you that we're in a very new world in the entertainment industry, and the people who can see things from a different perspective and innovate are going to own this.
Yeah.
Well, when you have more webinars like you had, was it last weekend?
Yeah.
Let us know.
I guess it was.
We'll do what we can to get people to show up.
Great.
And listeners, better show up, because I'm telling you,
right?
This is one of those golden moments, folks. You're going to get some good information and examples.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So thank you again.
Everybody go see Tombstone Rashomon. Sorry.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
We're still punching that. We're going to put some more links up when we do the link for this interview.
We did order it, and our DVDs come in
sometime.
Yay.
It's in the slow boat bin because it's not essential, but that's all right.
I think it's essential.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm comparing to masks. I think a lot of mustard is essential.
You can wear it as a mask.
Yeah, just rubber band it around your face.
Right, yeah.
We got the filters.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
All right. Well, Eric, stay safe.
Yes.
Keep rolling. I know you've got a bunch of stuff going, and we'll be checking in on that. Again, thank you. It's been wonderful, and can't actually wait to get this out there.
Yeah.
Thank you guys very much. Appreciate the time, and appreciate what you do.
So that was Eric Schumacher. That interview was awesome.
Yes, it was.
What a treat. What an awesome guy. I
was really looking forward to this. Just in the email exchanges, before all this, I knew this was going to be good.
Yeah, he was such a good interviewer.
And we talked about so much.
Yeah,
I mean,
we covered an awful lot of ground.
Yeah, and he was really gracious. I mean,
he was.
Well, because he did mention that, if we didn't set a time limit, we could probably go on forever. But he did have things to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a good talk.
It was
a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, I learned a lot.
Yeah. And, listeners, B-siders, do those things.
Yeah.
This is some rock solid advice that, straight from a source that matters.
Yes.
We can have our suppositions about what you can do for acting.
Right.
But
we're not actors.
We are not. Yeah. And, so there's a lot to learn there. And for anyone who is directing, producing, or starting out, getting into all that stuff.
Yeah.
This is like a PBS special.
It is. So yeah, and go check out his other stuff.
Yeah, check the show notes because we'll have some links to his production company, everything having to do with him. We'll also be putting the links back for Tombstone Rashomon.
Yeah, which our copy came in the mail.
Yeah. Day after the interview.
And we're going to watch it tonight.
Yes, we were. So yeah, and if you haven't seen it yet, see it.
Yeah.
You can go out and get it now. It's not rental. Video on demand. They said not until probably July. So, go out and grab it, man. It's $10.
Yeah.
Right?
Is it $10?
Yeah, it was $9.99.
Oh, okay.
You don't even know.
I just went and purchased it. I didn't even look at the price. I was like, doesn't matter. We're just getting it.
Well, that's what it is. So go check it out. Like I said, the links will be in the show notes. As always, stop by www.lordsofmissrollproductions.com and check out, we have our podcast episodes there. If you're not listening to them through there, we have links to all of the subscription platforms that we are on. We have our social media links. We have our Patreon link. Mm-hmm. We have our email links. One thing I want to touch on quick. So we've often complained about how hot this room is.
Yes.
Right?
Like constantly, almost every episode. Yeah.
Well, so we did get a question from a listener. Don't you get an air conditioner in there?
Oh.
It's a fair question, so I'm going to answer that. Well, because this room is 10 by 6.
Yes.
It's like 11 feet high. But it's also in the absolute middle of the apartment.
There's no windows.
There are no windows.
Weird room that's just kind of central to the whole apartment.
Right. And the problem with bringing anything in here is we're trying to do a podcast.
It's going to make a lot of noise.
And even with a fan.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk over that, and I can't mix that out.
That's true. We should just stop complaining about being hot.
No, we're going to complain. Well, actually, it's coming, time to, eventually we'll be switching to AC. There is an AC vent in here.
Yeah.
When that happens, things will be better.
We'll start bitching about it being cold in here.
You will.
I will. Yeah.
I will be in heaven till it hits 37.5 degrees. I won't be cold.
What are you?
I don't know. A lover of cool air. Yeah. So, it will eventually get to the point where we stop complaining. However, until then, it's fucking hot in this room off and on.
It is.
So yeah, also, for those of you who jump on over to YouTube, we are no longer doing full episodes. No more audio. We are videoing these. Not this part. We did the interview, but yeah, I didn't feel like setting it all back up again. So yeah, they're, average about 15 minutes or so of various pieces. That's what we'll be having there. Full episodes you can find at our website at anywhere you find your podcasts. So I guess that's it. Super fantastic talk.
Yeah.
With Eric. I cannot wait for things to change so that we can see the rest of his stuff.
I know.
And well, here's the best part. That gives us an excuse to talk to him again.
Yes.
So I'll be counting those days down. Yeah, check out everything. Check out the links in the show notes. Also, what we always say, just, keep rolling, doing what you're doing. It sucks. We all know that right now, the situation. Do your best, make some stuff, make some films. I'm working with our daughter. We're making a documentary on one of her favorite stuffed animal.
Yes.
And, everything from pre-production notes. She's writing the script, and we're going to do some minor sets and do a whole post-production thing. Why not? So, do your thing. Do it. Make some stuff. Also, quick update. I know this was a long episode, but I feel like it was worth it. And I also feel like it takes worth this extra moment. I had mentioned Blake Ritter, director from the UK, who's been doing all those shorts.
Oh, yeah.
He did the coronavirus one in January before all of this became worldwide. He won Best Director and I can't remember the other one, Best Short or Best Story in a couple online festivals.
Nice. Way to go, Blake.
Yeah. So check it out. Blake Ritter, just, find him on YouTube, look him up, see his stuff. It's really cool stuff. They're all shorts. And yeah, use that to fuel your energies.
Yeah. And if you have anything that you want us to take a look at, email us. Let us know. Or message us on Twitter or wherever it is you can find us.
Yeah. Well, you can find us on Twitter.
We're everywhere.
Facebook and
Insta. Yeah.
Did I say Instagram? I thought I did.
Maybe.
I don't know. All right. Okay, B-Siders. That's going to do it for this episode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you got as much out of our talk with Eric as we did. We got some more good stuff coming.
Yes.
So keep tuning in or downloading or however the hell you call it these days.
We'll catch you next week.
All right. Until then, B-Siders.
Bye.
Bye.